Next item, we have a request of approval to adopt the Oregon Administrative Rule as noted, the physical description on a driver's license. And we, Mr. McClellan, we have a discussion today. Good to see you.
Chair Boehme, members of the Commission, for the record, my name is Tom McClellan. I'm the DMV Administrator. The purpose of me being here is to request your approval of administrative rule involving a sex identifier on driver licenses and ID cards. In June of 2016, Oregon DMV was presented with a court order, a sex change, a fairly common thing for us actually that we receive. We had policies in place to accommodate a sex change on a driver record and a license. And normally a court order provides definitive documentation for the change. But this was something new. The Multnomah County Circuit Court order did not identify the sex of the individual as male or female, but as non-binary. To our knowledge, this was the first court order of its kind in the United States. This set off a series of questions and challenges for us. So I can get this to work. The first question was whether or not we had the legal authority to comply with this court order. We're required by statute to collect an applicant's sex on the application. We're also required to capture a brief description of the person to whom the credential is issued, which for decades is aligned with the American Association of Motor Vehicles, or the AMVA, car design standards, which includes sex. We don't have any statutory language in the vehicle code that limited sex to male or female, however. We were aware of an earlier Jackson County Circuit Court ruling in which the judge had expressed regret that he could not change the petitioner's sex to anything other than male or female. The judge had reached out to other judges across the state and determined that Oregon law only recognized sex as male or female. Obviously, there were differing opinions and interpretation of state law. Although we felt this was a state and perhaps a national issue, DMV was the first place that this individual presented their court order. We accepted that we were the entry point for state government, but thought this may present an opportunity for a broader, statewide legal and policy review. So we asked the Attorney General's office if DMV had the authority to add a third sex identifier to an Oregon driver's license. After a thorough legal review, we were told there were no legal impediments to DMV adding a third sex identifier to comply with the court order. No legal impediments doesn't necessarily mean we have statutory authority, but we did have a court order. We knew this would impact more than DMV. Although our existing process for changing a sex identifier is currently only in policy, we decided to establish requirements that would include a third sex identifier in rule. The formal rulemaking process ensured that stakeholder engagement across the state would happen and provided an opportunity for public comment. We held 2 Rule Advisory Committee meetings in October and December of 2016. Participants included representatives from the Oregon Department of Corrections, Department of Justice, of course, Department of Transportation, State Police, Judicial Department, Secretary of State, Center for Health Statistics, and Basic Rights Oregon. A number of private citizens also attended these meetings, including the individual with the court order and their attorney. Our first meeting focused on information gathering. Advocates for the non-binary community supported either eliminating the sex identifier on the face of the card completely or adding another option for them to choose. We found no opposition from any of the state agencies to adding a third sex indicator. Since elimination of the sex identifier was really beyond our scope, the second meeting focused on the impact of adding a third identifier, which was primarily the need to identify and update systems that share the sex identifier as a data element. System updates are necessary to ensure that the data fields that are currently locked to accept only M or F would recognize and not reject a third character. Because the agencies and systems we interface with may share data elements with agencies and systems beyond DMV's borders, it's not possible for us to identify the full impact of this one character change. But in the end, most agencies decided to implement the change within their existing update schedules and did not identify any concerns if their update lagged to DMV systems to this data field. So they said they would bring it up to standards at some point. DMV has our own system challenges, as you know, and we knew it would require some lead time. We not only needed to reprogram our systems, we had to initiate a contract modification with our card vendor. With no roadblocks identified, we didn't want to delay our ability to comply with the court order any longer than necessary, so we pursued the technical changes in parallel with the rule change. First, however, we had to identify what the additional character would be. The decision to use an X for not specified was actually fairly easy. It was adopted as an option by AMVA, the Motor Vehicle Association, in 2016. It has international acceptance by the International Civil Aviation Organization. It doesn't attempt to classify individuals with an evolving terminology and was supported by our Rules Advisory Committee. At least 8 countries currently issue passports with the option of X in the sex field. In response to a human rights complaint, Ontario, Canada issued their first driver license with an X sex identifier in March of this year. With a technical solution in the works, the next task was to develop the draft rule. Initially, we thought to pattern our new rule after our existing policy for changing a customer's sex identifier, which required the presentation of documents to verify the sex identifier change. We opted instead to draft a rule that allows people to self-certify. It was simple. Our legal advisors liked it. Our customer service representatives are very happy that they may no longer have to verify supporting documentation that they can't realistically verify. It also was consistent with how we collect height and weight data, which is also printed on the face of the credential. Our draft rule went out for public comment in April, and we had 2 public hearings in May, in Eugene and in Portland. The public comments and testimony were overwhelmingly positive. Out of 83 comments, both written and oral, only 12 were opposed to the rule. Most of the 12 opposing comments were things like, "This is ridiculous," "insanity," and "political correctness gone haywire." A city police officer simply stated that if we were taking votes, his vote was no. One comment that provided a practical explanation for opposition pointed out that the purpose of the descriptors on a driver's license is for physical identification, and that a feelings-based descriptor ultimately is unhelpful as a physical description. They suggested if we were going to go that route, the identifier should be eliminated completely. The idea of eliminating the sex identifier completely was also proposed by some of the non-binary advocates, although it was not universally supported within that community. We considered this option earlier, determined it was really outside our scope, but we also realized that other entities like AMVA had it in their card design standards. It's also in the Federal Real ID Act that you will print some sex indicator on the card. There was also a request for additional analysis of the risks to non-binary people associated with national acceptance of the X for a sex identifier. Many commenters acknowledged that having it on their driver's license would not eliminate the challenges they currently face. Some indicated that they would wait until they had a better understanding of the impacts before changing to the X. To summarize the 3 key elements of the proposed rule: 1, the descriptors on the face of the card remain the same. We'll have height, weight, and sex. All the descriptors will be self-certified by the individual on their application and can be changed using that same application process. And 3rd, there will be a 3rd sex identifier option. In addition to male or female, individuals will be able to select X for, again, not specified. The testimony provided in support of the new rule provided important insight into some DMV customers that, according to a study quoted by one of the witnesses, are as common as redheads. People didn't share their testimony, they shared their stories. They told us of their struggles so that we'd understand the need. I'd like to share some of the public comments we received in support of the rule. The first one is from an attorney from Corvallis. This is a segment of that letter. "I support the Oregon DMV's approach to allowing an X designation in the sex field on driver licenses and identification cards. Not only does this align with standards established by the United Nations International Civil Aviation Association, particularly support the policies that allow self-identification rather than requirements such as a court order or medical verification. Verification presents a significant barrier for many individuals. Not only can obtaining these verifications be time-consuming and expensive, they again subject individuals to the possibility of harassment by uneducated or disrespectful staff. In Benton County, where I practice law, I have successfully petitioned the court on behalf of clients twice for a non-binary designation. However, neither of my clients were able to navigate the process on their own, nor did they have funds available to hire an attorney to represent them. The process is public, requiring public posting and a public hearing, time-consuming and stressful. Despite going through that process, those court orders have been of little practical importance for clients. I appreciate that the DMV has so quickly moved forward to implement this rule so that my clients and other Oregonians who are gender nonconforming can be issued IDs that reflect their gender identity. We received an email comment. Thank you. Although these changes started in the courts, DMV proceeded in a respectful and welcoming manner. While on the website a while ago, I saw the "We're working on it" notice. It was well worded, informative, and considerate. That notice made me smile because someone had taken the time to draft it in a way that showed DMV being careful and considerate. Thank you. The actual solution seems simple and brilliant at the same time. Rather than trying to create an abbreviation for the growing proliferation of gender labels, DMV went with an X. At least for me, it's important not to have the wrong gender label, and this avoids that without requiring me to choose another label. Thank you for making it easy for me. Little along my transition has been easy. A consistent concern we heard throughout the public testimony was how TSA would view an X identifier at airports. Many testified to their experiences going through airport security, and most of the stories are about stress or harassment, but some are just about human interaction. Did you know that the body scanner at the airport requires the TSA agent to select either a pink or a blue button to register you as either male or female before they scan you? One witness shared this story. I stood in the airport scanner, hands over my head. TSA worker number 1 looks me up and down. He looks at his fellow TSA worker for support. He shrugs. She shrugs. Her response. As his fingers hover over pink or blue, pink, blue, I leaned forward and whispered, "Push pink." It breaks me up every time I read this. Immediate relief on his face and hers. "Oh," they say in stereo, and I couldn't tell. I laughed. Yeah, me either, my whole life. Here's one from a high school teacher with the dubious honor of teaching driver education. She described her class of 15-year-olds and their excitement as they anticipated a sacred milestone on the path to adulthood, obtaining a driver's license. She also described the absolute terror of 3 transgender students whose dread of going to the DMV went well beyond taking tests or the usual reasons people don't like going to DMV. The stress of having to fill out an application and face uncomfortable questions has completely overtaken the excitement of achieving this teen rite of passage. There were other concerns about how people would respond to the X and about using it out of state. TSA, again, was a common theme, but law enforcement and even insurance complications were mentioned. Despite their concerns, everyone who testified at the public hearing supported this as a good first step, and they were very proud of their state and appreciative of how DMV has approached the issue. I wish I had more time to share more of the comments. Perhaps there's one that sums up a common sentiment we heard over and over. I'm not asking to be liked. I'm not asking to be understood. All I'm asking is to be treated with respect. If the proposed rule is approved, we're on track for a July 1st implementation. We will be able to issue the first Oregon driver license with an X when DMV field offices open on Monday, July 3rd. Throughout this process, we have been reminded that what we do impacts people's lives. We have not received the normal criticism for not moving faster. We've actually been thanked over and over again for our diligent efforts to keep this moving. If this rule is approved, we'll have basically accomplished the change in a year, practically lightning speed, given the complexities of our systems and the significance of the policy decision. I request your approval to adopt Oregon Administrative Rule 735-062-0013.
Mr. McClellan, thank you very much. Commissioner, please.
Thank you, Tom, for your work on this. And I think the issue at hand, and when we request approval on an administrative rule, it just doesn't do it justice. And it's fitting that this is before us during Pride Week in Oregon and Pride Month around the country. It's rare that you would say to someone, thank you for suing us. But I think Lambda Legal made a point that would have been nice to get to on our own, and I'm glad we embraced it as we did, as we have embraced this issue. And I hope we can move forward on this, and I hope those who will use X as an identifier will feel an element of comfort moving forward. And I think it is not only something we're doing because we legally, our hand is forced, but it's something that we should do because it's the right thing to do. And I applaud your effort on it, and those who have testified and given their input, and those who have endured it being a challenge previously. So I hope we can put that to rest and move forward. I support this and look forward to voting in favor of it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lohman?
I second Commissioner Halloran's comments.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I too agree with Commissioner Halloran, and I applaud the professionalism and dignity that Mr. McClellan provided with his diligent staff work. We often forget that we represent all the people of Oregon, and for this item is such a very important item to a few individuals, and we're allowing them to maintain their respect, their dignity, and I appreciate, again, what has been done moving this forward.
I would also like to add that I very much support the comments of my colleagues, and you know, we are all unique individuals and life is not easy, and for us to remove any barrier that assists an individual in moving forward, the piece about the less burden on an individual to have to prove that piece just in and of itself, by being able, my driver's license, if you look at it, it states that I'm 5'3", and you know what, I take off my heels and I'm not. And so, you know, well, apparently when I was 16, I wanted to be, I'm not sure, but, so I'm just being candid about the fact that it should be universal. And I appreciate that the department has decided that you're looking for the path forward with the least resistance. Our job is to serve, and our job is to serve all, and I very much appreciate that approach. So I would welcome a motion.
So, Madam Chair, while this does sound rather administrative, and it is,
Literally.
it really is much more significant than that. And accordingly, I request the approval to adopt Oregon Administrative Rule 735-062-0013, the physical description on driver's license, driver permit or identification card, sex indicator.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. And you know, we could have taken longer. You know, I appreciate the expediency that we went through, and for the individuals that provided input for us to be where we are today.
Yeah,
So,
and the patience of those individuals as well,
Yes.
as we work through this.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Great to see you.
Thank you.